We are live, coming at you with another episode of the Freedom Real Estate Podcast.
Hey, his zipper's down. I got him.
Dang. Such a beautiful intro, but you know what? That's how we roll. Typical Andrew.
Let's do it.
So, Andrew, as is the Freedom Real Estate Podcast, I want to talk to you about what financial freedom means to you, because obviously the classic way to measure it is if your passive income covers your basic expenses. But I was listening to another podcast recently, and they came across a very interesting idea where they measured in levels like being able to afford anything at a grocery store without looking at the price, affording anything at a fancy restaurant without looking at the price, or going to any vacation without having to worry about how much it costs. Do you have any similar scales or a different maybe way of looking at it in terms of what lifestyle that it approves you?
So, Artem, I was literally born for this question. With my last name being Freed, right? But no, I mean, to your point, there's so many aspects of freedom that financial freedom can provide outside of strictly monetary benefit, right? And a lot of it has to do with control over your destiny, right? So to your point, the scarcity mindset versus the abundant mindset, when you don't really have to worry about money, you really don't have to, when that bill comes or when you're in the grocery store, like price, it doesn't really matter in your decision making, right? It doesn't even bring you down. You don't even have to think about it, right? You don't have to use my thought energy towards that concept. And it's liberating. Yep. It's ultimately liberating, right? Obviously, the normal concept of financial freedom is, your income from your investments supersede your monthly overhead, right? At that point, you don't have to work. Your investments support your current lifestyle.
Yes. And one thing I really like about that idea is if you, for example, are stuck in a job or you're doing something just for the money so you can buy maybe more property or whatever, now that you do have that financial freedom, you can maybe explore different career options or maybe work at like a charity or nonprofit somewhere where you make less, but you wake up in the morning with more excitement. You actually enjoy doing what you're doing.
I mean, I think we've all experienced that moment on Sunday when it's like 8 p.m. rolls around. You got Monday coming around and you're absolutely dreading going to bed, right?
The Sunday scaries.
Yeah, like I've literally been there at office jobs where literally I was like throwing up in worry of going to that job because I literally hated my boss. I hated that job, right? And financial freedom allows you to really when you wake up on Monday, you're excited about the week. You're looking forward to it. You're really enjoying the process rather than dreading the process.
Yeah, and you're totally right. Living with purpose, that's a big one. It allows you to choose what you want to do versus having to do something because you feel like there's no escape.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest, I would say imagery in my life is like, especially working at W-2, is I've always felt like I was in a prison. I always felt like I was locked to that W-2. I had to go there from 9 to 5. Like I couldn't escape that destiny, right? And, when I found real estate, when I found financial freedom, it really allowed me to escape that prison, right? So financial freedom really allows you to live with purpose and really kind of live, with excitement versus kind of dreading your week to week or your daily life, right?
Yeah. And maybe I shouldn't say this on a podcast, but a little bit of anecdote out of my life is, for example, in my work, I always wanted to, get that next career step, maybe get a promotion. And from what I'm seeing, the amount of work that it takes, the guys that do get promoted alongside me have to put in so many extra hours to prove how, dedicated they are, maybe to get that like $10,000 to $20,000 raise. And myself, not that I'm saying that I'm slacking, but I'm definitely doing what I need to do at work, but I'm not maybe pushing it so hard. Maybe I'm not putting in weekends, but I've given myself a $20,000 to $30,000 raise with real estate every single year with the basically extra time that I'm given. And that's becoming a much better time for dollars equation there to get that same raise or maybe even more.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like when I went from $85,000 a year to $125,000 in a W-2, like my lifestyle and my income barely changed. Like I know maybe my monthly income, I brought home $1,000, $1,500 more. It really didn't move the needle at the end of the day. right? And that's why, you really have to invest and you really have to have side hustles these days to escape the grind, because ultimately, you chasing that more higher and higher and higher paying job is really not going to have a meaningful effect on your life unless you take some dramatic moves.
Exactly. I think the only people for whom that advice doesn't apply is if you're like doing AI in Facebook and you're making 500,000-600,000 a year, and then
Sure, but I mean, in that particular case, you should be funneling, the money that you're making from your high W-2
to someone like you for syndications to invest for them.
Or in investments so they can eventually reach financial freedom and decide what they want to work on. Maybe they'll decide they want to continue working in AI on Facebook. Maybe not, but they'll have the choice.
Exactly. One other aspect I really like with this idea of financial freedom, giving you that freedom to do whatever you want in life, is not necessarily maybe having to deal with the people. Like, for example, if you have a boss you don't like, you can tell them to screw off and it won't really change your life. Like, what are they going to do? Fire you? You already make more money from real estate. Or if you feel like you have to, wait in certain lines or go for the cheapest service, like at the bus stop, for example, given that freedom, you can then pay your way to not have to deal with certain people, or to pay your way to save time for like a higher end service, for example. And that's something else that financial freedom allows you.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to give you an example of how I get the experience. I'm going to these, I'm speaking at events, right? I'm going to these walkthroughs. A lot of times I'm just wearing shorts and a shirt, right? And that's just, at this point, I've already reached financial freedom. It really doesn't matter to me where people think of me or not. So it's like I can wear whatever I want. And just having that freedom in every aspect of your life is absolutely liberating.
Absolutely. And that is why we love financial freedom.
As long as your zipper is up.
Love it. Only for you, Andrew. Now, the next idea I want to talk to you about is actually something I also recently heard. And it's some much more seasoned investors, granted, are actually focusing on not scaling the number of doors that they're having, but actually paying off their loans sooner so that they get the maximum rent for the properties that they already have.
Totally.
So I wanted to get your take on that. Do you see it as two different paths, where one maybe leads to less headaches, but you're less levered? The other one where maybe you get to scale faster, but you're also getting a smaller percentage of cash flow from each door?
So let's frame this question, right? So it really depends on the stage in your investing career and the stage in your life, right? If you've already reached financial freedom and you're trying to defend that wealth and keep that sustainability going, then it makes sense to maybe downsize, reduce your risk, and pay off more properties and maybe get a low return, but have less risk, in the real estate market, because you're not as levered, right? Versus, if you haven't reached financial freedom and you're in a growth phase, or maybe you just are in a growth phase, maximizing leverage absolutely makes the most sense when it comes to maximizing your return, right? So, it's maxing leverage is great for scaling, reducing your leverage is great for, keeping your wealth safe, right? So it really depends on your goals, in my opinion, on what strategy makes sense.
Gotcha. Something we talked about on a previous episode is internal rate of return. And the idea is that as soon as a property appreciates, or as soon as you're able to refinance, get that money out of there, get into the next deal, so your money keeps working harder for you. So if you're actually paying off your properties, you're going to tank your internal IRR because you're not even taking any money out. However, something that is hard to put into a calculation is the headache factor. If you say, let's say you have 10 doors and they bring you $20,000, you're dealing with 10 tenants. But if you have, 1,000 or 2,000 doors that you need to make that same amount of money, that's that many more headaches that you need to deal with, or you need to pay property management or a team to deal for you. And that's definitely a lot more work.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, everything has their pros and their cons, right? That's definitely a con that makes total sense, right? I think one of the pros is you get economies of scale, right? If I own hundreds and hundreds of units, my materials are cheaper, my labor is cheaper, my overall cost of managing that property is cheaper, right? So personally, I would rather choose economies of scale versus simplicity, but, it's the prerogative of the investor.
So then, follow-up question, would you ever consider paying off all of your properties further down the road? Or would you just sell them and sit on the next egg.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, further down the road, if, I don't need any more and enough is enough and I want to protect the wealth I have, then yeah, absolutely paying off the property, might make sense, right? But, if I'm really trying to maximize my return, the play, in my opinion, is maximizing leverage.
Gotcha. Let's say when you're, 60 or 70.
Sure, that absolutely might make sense for where I am in life, for sure. And that goes back to stage, right? Maybe I'll be at the right stage where I'm in a defensive sort of mode. But, right now, personally, my growth feels exponential. I feel like I have the wind behind my back. And, I think it'd be a bad time to not lean into the wind.
Love it. Absolutely. So if you're a young whippersnapper, maximize that leverage up to the hilt. And if you're older or looking to get out of the game, maybe sell half your portfolio to pay off the other half.
There you go.
All right.
And remember to put your zipper up.
He's never going to let me live that down. All right. And now, Andrew, I believe it's one of your favorite topics is negotiating loan terms.
I love asking for money.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. But I like asking for money in an intelligent way.
Absolutely. So this applies more to commercial loans than residential loans. However, residential do also have a couple levers you can pull. But the beauty of negotiating your loan terms is that you might have a deal that might cost a certain amount of money or need a certain amount of rehab, and you go to the bank and you think, oh, the rate that they give you or the down payment that they prescribe is pretty much what you have to stick to. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. However, a lot of people probably don't negotiate nearly enough because the rate can be very much negotiated. The time of the loan can be negotiated as well as a down payment. And all of those are up for grabs if you know how to ask.
That's exactly correct, Artem. And so when it comes to commercial loans, we're really talking about loans from mostly small local credit unions or banks in your area, right? And they base the loan based off the debt service coverage ratio or the income of the property versus the debt, right? So the loans are way more flexible with how they're given because, at the end of the day, a lot of this money is these small local credit unions' own funds. They're portfolio lenders, right? So when it comes to commercial loans, they have a lot of flexibility. But when you ask for money, you always get a ton of questions, right? So the important thing about seeking commercial loans is putting a nice package together that is everything the bank would want to know, right? So it has information on the sponsors. Who's guaranteeing the loan? Do they have the net worth to support this loan? What is their expertise? What is the business plan on what you're planning on doing to bring this property to stabilization? What do the numbers look like now versus what will they look like, right? These are important questions that will be asked if you don't provide that information up front, right? So a lot of times me and my team, we create these things called a loan request package, right? And we provide all that information up front in like a 15-page package, right? And we write right on the front page what terms we want. And when we do that, it allows us to, first of all, show as in a very professional manner to our lenders, but it also allows us to expedite term sheets, get multiple term sheets quicker, and negotiate those term sheets among many lenders.
Absolutely. And once you make that term sheet, you can probably shop around multiple banks. You don't have to stick with one, right?
That's exactly correct. You can use those term sheets against other lenders to get equal or better terms, right? And, I think what Artem alluded to in the beginning is commercial loans are amazing because, just like you go to one of those Brazilian steakhouses. You ever been there?
Oh, absolutely.
It's a la carte. You can get steak, you can get pork, you can get whatever you want, right? And you can do the same thing with these commercial loans depending on what business plan you need to stabilize this property, right? So I can ask for a no prepay if I'm planning on refining in a year and taking my money out. I can ask for construction money if it's a deep value add. I can ask for a low interest rate if it's a already stabilized property, right? There's different strategies that you would utilize depending on the actual property. And that's why I love commercial loans. It allows you the flexibility to ask for those terms.
So Andrew, what are some interesting loan negotiation strategies you can share from a recent experience?
So these are definitely some big boy strategies. Like you definitely got to be in the game and making big moves for these strategies, but they're absolutely applicable if you get a really big deal under contract, right? So the first term that people might not think about is a partial release clause, right? And that allows you to, say, for example, you buy a portfolio of properties, 5, 10, 15, 20 properties in one foul swoop. You want the ability to sell off individual properties, pay back the loan while keeping the loan in place, right? So it really allows you to parcel off properties one by one and sell them at a max price per door. That's a fantastic strategy, and many people don't even know you can ask for that.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a really good term to ask for. And another strategy, and this is for a really large investor, is you can max out a bank. Like, so typically these small local credit unions have a max per bar, 5, 10, 15, 20 million, right? So if you go to a bank and you essentially say, I'm going to max you out, they can give you way more competitive terms than if you were just a one-off borrower.
That's if you take out the max amount of money all up front.
Yeah, or you have 2 or 3 loans lined up to max out their $5 million. Maybe I have 3 properties, which would equal a loan amount of $5 million, and they give me a point lower than the market because I'm bringing them $5 million worth of loans in one foul swoop.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to try those once I get to that level. And now, what are some common mistakes that people should know to avoid when negotiating with loans?
So this is a common mistake that I actually did when I started investing, right? It's like I would send my loan request package out to 30, 40, 50 banks, right? And after a certain point of a lender providing me a term sheet and me not going with them, they would get discouraged and they would stop providing term sheets, right? So, I think you have to, it's great to negotiate terms, but you also have to be strategic about it. And what I mean by that is some lenders focus on value add construction projects. Others focus on stabilized projects, right? You got to understand what the appetite for that bank, what sort of loans they're looking for, and aiming at that, right? So I think that's important, is understanding your lenders, understanding what they're looking for, and providing a good package with a nice bow in it for them to present to their loan committee and ultimately get you great terms.
So it's better to have 5 or 6 banks that you often work with than shotgunning to 30 different ones.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that's true for sure. As you grow, you tend, like I mentioned the max earlier, we can max out banks. You tend to max out banks and have to work with new lenders. But I mean, the thing about banks, right, is like, just like the market has cycles, these banks have cycles with their lending capacity, right? Like they only have a certain amount of asset allocation for real estate, multifamily real estate, right? When they use that up, they have to wait and siphon it off before they can add more, right? So typically our experience is, a bank will be bullish on multifamily because they need it in their portfolio for a year or two. They fill it up and they don't need it anymore. And then we have to find another bank that is in that, that growth phase when it comes to loans for multifamily assets, which is what I buy.
And they're all out of sync, so you're looking for that next cycle for almost every new deal, right?
That's exactly correct. I've gone through 4 or 5 or 6 banks that I did a lot with, and they essentially maxed out, and I had to find a new kind of deep relationship.
Understood. Any other mistakes that people should avoid?
Yeah, I would definitely say, the money's made in the follow-up, right? Like, people get busy, people forget, but, like, it's important to have a really strong follow-up game if you're asking for all these term sheets. Because ultimately, you never know, there might be a diamond in the rough. Like, a lender might be super busy because they're a fantastic lender. Your email got lost, you didn't follow up, and you missed the great deal, right? So follow-up is key, especially when you shop around these loan terms.
Awesome. I love talking about lending with you, Andrew. Always learn a couple of new nuggets.
I love asking for money.
And so, Andrew, something I'm really learning, and especially when it comes to larger listings, or maybe if you're going for luxury, is professional photography and how important it is versus just doing your own pictures with a cell phone.
Yeah, I mean, hey, we're in a freaking studio for a reason. Like, it matters, and presentation matters, and I always get professional photos. It could be my list, it could be me renting my units, right? But professional photos really make a difference.
Absolutely. A couple other pieces that personally I really like that are little added touches, but they do make a big difference, is doing things like the 3D layout, the floor plan. That answers a lot of questions for people before even going to the listing. And the big one that Andrew and I actually experimented with recently is professional staging. And not virtual staging, but actual staging, where we paid a couple grand for furniture to be brought in. Very, very tastefully crafted. Like just the coolest little accents, like a fruit bowl in the kitchen or a small painting in the bathroom. But the amount of liveliness that adds not only to your photos, but to the open house when people walk through is amazing. I think we've probably gotten some of our biggest offers just from that one touch, and it only costs a couple grand.
So when it comes to professional photos, especially when it comes to renting units, you really got to think of the return on investment, right? If a professional photos, maybe they cost $200-$300, right? If they result in you renting your unit a month quicker and the unit costs $2,000 a month, like you're literally saving $1,700 in that situation, right?
Absolutely.
Because you're saving a month. It would cost you $2,000 in that scenario. You're paying $300 for these pictures. What's the delta? $1,700, right? So, getting professional photos actually saves you money on vacancy. I've experienced this. I've tried without professional photos. It literally takes double as long to rent your units.
Absolutely. And you can reuse those pictures over and over again, so the price per use actually goes down.
This leads back into our discussion about seeking loan terms, right? When you're doing these loan terms, you do these loan request packages showing what you did to the property and providing pictures, right? So if the property presents well in this package, it's only going to help your case to get the refinance and the loans that you're looking for. So, I think to wrap it up, when it comes to photos, they're honestly an evergreen resource, right? They allow you to rent your units quicker. They allow you to seek better loan terms when you're refinancing it. It allows you to sell that much quicker, right? And if you really make them pop with editing and staging, you can really make your property stand out among the rest.
Absolutely. So don't cheap out. Get professional pictures done. And that is our episode of the Freedom Real Estate Podcast.
And don't forget, zipper up.